Hi, I'm Adam Abraham. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Carly Nuday. She's the author of Water Codes, The Science of Health, Consciousness, and Enlightenment. And we'll be talking about water, its use, particularly in the area of agriculture, which is by far the largest consumer of water, ground and surface water, in the probably in the world, certainly in the United States. There are opportunities to be had when we are more aware of the nature of water. This particular case shows some of those potentials. Thank you for watching. I'm just going to turn on the camera first of all, and we'll just kind of begin. Are you comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. And I have you. I'm kind of tight on there. So looks like you're right there. All right. We're talking with Dr. Carly Nuday, author of Water Codes, and there's so many aspects to water that we take for granted, and often to our detriment. And we don't know we have, not say we don't know we have to, we don't know that we can consider other possibilities. I'll give you an example. In our farmer, our dairyman, who put the largest Vortex generator on his pivot system, got a heck of a response from his corn crop. And I asked him, did he consider the possibility of using less water, dialing the water back?
You know, that's an interesting question. It was we actually had some frustrations this summer with the watering, and I didn't think about it that maybe I was over-watering, because we're just, generally when it's 100 degrees out and corn's growing, you always keep water on. But we honestly didn't have to this year. And one of the reasons we didn't is because our pivots kept getting stuck. And so that is definitely a sign that we were giving the crop more water than it needed.
This is where you have to be noticing pretty much of everything all the time, because we have to deal with our established habits, because we've stopped thinking about them. And then you got to notice again and say, okay, what's different now than the way things were, and now work with that. So there clearly is an efficiency factor with water. What are your thoughts about that?
I would call it a bioavailability. So, structured water permeates the cells. It's able to interact with the microorganisms of the ground, more efficiently. Because it's more bioavailable, it can transport nutrients up to the plant more efficiently, and permeate those structures. Same thing in the body, right? So not only are you able to dial back the water, I would argue in virtually all cases of beneficial structuring to water, you're going to be able to dial back the amount of water needed for something like agriculture, but also less fertilizer, because the water is able to permeate the root structure in the plants or the cell structure in the body and bring nutrients in and out much more efficiently. So especially if we're looking at something, and I know he's not a chemical farmer, but it stands in organic farming also. If we're not using water that's going to be able to permeate root structure easily, then we're going to end up leaving actually a lot of our nutrients locked in the soil, causing salt buildup and not benefiting an established balance of microflora. So I think that need for the amount of fertilizer and need for the amount of water go hand in hand with something like structured water, where we can really dial back both of those things and still experience an increase in fruiting, yielding, or health in the case of the human body.
Well, interestingly, and you might say inadvertently, at least from the way he described it to me, he had some kind of soil amendment. You know, wasn't chemical based, but it was a soil amendment nonetheless that he normally puts on his crops. And circumstances were such, in some kind of way, he wasn't able to do it.
And just to back up, because we had so much expense in really trying to overwork this soil that I've been so careful about taking care of, and building up the organic matter and all those sorts of things. We had to take care of our vole problem before we could grow another crop. So we really overworked this soil. I didn't have any more money in the budget to put into fertilizer, and so after I planted the corn, I put no fertilizer on it whatsoever, and we're still getting a great yield.
And so instead of, well, he thought that was a problem, except that the sprouting occurred in 7 days, which typically was 14 to 21 days before he see sprouts come from the ground. Now, the interesting thing that I noted was that when we took the voltage count out of the line, coming out of the pond up before the vortex generator, it was 0.4 volts. At the vortex generator, it was 1.3 to 1.5 volts. After it, it was 1.3, 1.4 volts. Roughly a threefold increase in available voltage. Okay? And it turned out that, let's say at the best case 2 weeks, or normal 3 weeks, first sign of sprouting became
7 days.
7 days.
Yeah.
Roughly 1/3.
Yeah.
Interesting relationship there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the kind of effect that I think it would have across agriculture, you know. And we know that. We know that structuring water increases seed germination rates.
Right.
You know, we know that. So that's going to be an expected byproduct. And can you imagine what would happen to our farming and if instead of waiting 2 to 3 weeks for sprouting, we're only waiting 7. And instead of waiting 90 days to harvest, we're only waiting 60. The amount that we're able to produce and the way that we're able to do that with having a positive effect on our ecosystems rather than a negative effect, like we see in chemical farming, and is astronomical. So I'm sure that his corn or his fields also probably had better resistance to stress and disease this year, better resistance to insects, you know.
Here's an interesting thing too, and I don't know what the factor is there, but just before he planted this corn, because he had just lost a crop to voles.
This spring we had the misfortune of having some voles come in and inhabit our pasture here at our dairy, and so I made the decision to plant corn so that we could try to eliminate those voles and then rotate a crop in order to get some sort of yield this year off of it.
Really?
On that same ground.
Same plot, yeah.
On that same plot, he had to turn it over. This cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Lost it. He had told me about that when I first went up there in May. And I didn't know this is where he was going to be planted. Didn't know, none of my business, but that's where he planted the corn, okay? So, because he normally plants grasses.
Okay.
Okay, so he planted corn and on a plot that had just been decimated by voles. And, well, I asked what happened to the vole problem, because when I asked him, I didn't know this was the plot he was talking about. I figured it was someplace nearby. No, it was this land. This is what happened. Apparently the voles moved away.
Yeah.
How about that?
I mean, that's huge. That's huge. So we're talking about a balanced ecology in our soil. that allows for not only better fruiting, but a better balance. Because obviously if you have a crop that's being decimated by voles, it means that the voles are out of balance. Whatever is happening in that ecology has allowed them to overpopulate, this area. So, it's then about balance and supporting life's processes. Life's processes are not for a crop to be overrun by voles. It's for everything to be in a balance.
Right.
And structured water is what life requires to maintain that balance. It's what it requires to maintain the balance of our temperature in our body, much less the balance of an ecosystem in a ground or a forest. And so that's why, and I touch on in the book how several of nature's processes are part of structuring that water, because that's so important for our planet's ecosystem. I think that's fantastic that he didn't run into a problem with voles. I was not expecting that. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't get any incremental updates either over time, so a lot of this was new to me at the time I was sitting, I was talking to him, and I might have suggested about using less water and everything else, but it's really kind of cool to not suggest it, have the experience, see what happens.
Yeah.
After the fact, he sees evidence that not as much water was needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Works out anywhere it goes,
Yeah.
This is part of, a lot of times we talk about having aha moments. And I just had described this as being his aha season.
Yeah.
Or aha planting.
Yeah.
Because, most people are not convinced until they have their own experience, or someone that they know, or someone going through what they're going through has had the experience, and then they're more willing, to, okay, maybe give this a try.
Oftentimes, things in the body relating to health are a little more intangible for us to just say, there's not typically a panacea, right?
Right.
But for farmers and their ability to watch their crops, it's very very apparent to them. They're very aware of what the season should look like, what they expect based on the temperature and the effects of the season. So it's easy for them to see the effect and the reality, and it's not about denying it, because at the end of the day, farmers want a better, larger harvest. And at the end of the day,
at lower cost as they can get it.
And at lower cost.
Sure.
And at lower cost, yeah.